when that hotline bling, that can only mean one thing.
This is weird. Sure. I'm Chris Tarbell. I'm currently a managing director in cybersecurity here at FTI Consulting. In a previous life, I was a FBI agent working cybercrime here in New York City, doing a variety of different cases and enjoying it.
That's perfect. So now that it's officially dead, what was the Silk Road?
The original Silk Road?
Yeah.
It's not totally dead. I'll give you the site is dead. The case isn't. But now that it is dead, it was an online eBay of drugs, hacking tools, fake documents, just about anything you wanted. There was only a couple rules that you couldn't have on Silk Road. One was fake diplomas. They didn't want to make people fake doctors, and they didn't want to sell guns. They sold guns for a little bit of time, but after that, they didn't want to sell guns at all.
So you personally arrested Ross. Can you walk us through how it all went down? Because it was quite cinematic, the whole, from what I read in the trial transcripts, how it all went down.
I was an FBI agent assigned to work cybercrime, and you hit a lot of different speed bumps along the way. One of the big one in any investigation, and this was around 2010 or so, was we'd come across what would be Tor IP addresses, and Tor stands for the Onion Router. And these were IP addresses that were being used to make people's connections anonymous. IP addresses are kind of like a telephone number for your computer online, and it's a way of tracing someone. So now with caller ID, if someone knows you and they call you, your telephone tells you who's calling. The same way is done with IP addresses, but Tor hides those IP addresses by encrypting traffic back and forth. So we work cases when in the FBI, and we'd come up with these Tor IP addresses, and the case would die. We'd just throw your hands in the air, and I can't go any further. It's Tor. Kind of shrug it off. So around 2010, it started really ramping up. People using it to hide themselves online and commit crime. And go from there. And Silk Road was sort of the golden ring of Tor. It was an example of, here's some crazy things you can find on Tor, and an example of what Tor was about. I mean, Tor is much bigger than just the hidden service Silk Road, but it was put things in context of how to find stuff and where and what exactly Tor was offering.
And so you were just basically. How did you discover that this existed? Were you following a particular case and you stumbled upon it, or was
Silk Road in particular, or
dark markets in general?
Dark markets in general. So prior to working the dark market stuff, we worked a case called against Anonymous LulzSec. One of the hackers that was part of that case was Jeremy Hammond. Jeremy Hammond was arrested in Chicago and now is serving 10 years in prison. Jeremy was using Tor to hide his traffic. So we began to become interested in Tor from that. And then once the LulzSec case was over and the prosecution had moved forward and made all the arrests, we decided to take a look at Tor. We wanted to do a new challenge, and we thought Tor might be, people claim it's unbreakable and you can't get anything out of it, so that we saw that as something that would be exciting to explore and learn about the technology more and go further. We just got a taste of it, going after Jeremy Hammond. So we looked into it, and then we found over 26 sites that were offering hacking services as part of them, Silk Road being one of them.
How's the online market, online drug game, how does it differ from the traditional hand-to-hand street drug game that we've come accustomed to for centuries?
It's more expensive. You're paying a premium for the ease. You can get high-quality drugs that you can't get on the street corner. Silk Road offered heroin cut directly off the brick. You're getting a quality that's not been cut down. It was reassured by DPR, by Ross Ulbricht. Your money was held in escrow until you got the drugs and were assured that you got the quality you wanted. So you're paying a premium for that. You're also paying a premium to not have to go to that street corner. You don't have to go and worry about getting robbed. You don't have to worry about your money just being taken and you not getting the drugs because Ross guaranteed that through the site.
Why did you leave the government?
I had death threats made against me. I had to lock my children's school down because of those threats. I had to move. I had been in law enforcement for about 16 years at the time, and my wife suggested that I had an offer to come to FTI Consulting at the same time, and suggested that maybe we explore that option. It was never my intentions. So when you become an FBI agent, you have to take a series of tests, and the second one is called Phase 2, and it's an interview. It's a panel interview. When I left Phase 2, I was ecstatic. I felt like I had blown it out of the water, and two things. Pretty cool. I'm going to be an FBI agent. I always dreamed to do that, and I was there. And two, I'll never have to do an interview again in my life because that's what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. So it was never a thought of mine to leave the FBI. I thought I would be there forever, and so it was a change. I've been out for about 18 months now, and I think I've adjusted well. I like it on the outside so far.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear about that. Did you ever receive death threats before this trial?
No.
What was it about this trial? Was it just the high-profile nature of it, or was there a specific?
So it was right after the case. If you look at the timing in the world, we arrested Ross during the first week of October. The government was shut down at the time, meaning you can't have a press conference, you can't do anything like that. And so there was one voice coming out of the government for the arrest of Ross Ulbricht and the takedown of Silk Road, and it was my name on the end of the affidavit. So I became the target for the 5,500 drug dealers that we had taken their money from, legally seized. I won't say taken their money. We legally seized their money, and the other people that we took their opportunity to purchase drugs, took their mechanism of receiving the illegal goods.
You've spent all this time and energy investigating, and you finally make that arrest. Like, how does that feel personally?
I mean, that's unfortunately you're taking someone's freedom away, but that means that you've done a good job. You found the bad guy. In cybercrime, the hardest part is what we call filling the air gap. So you can so in cybercrime you do two different things. You trace the money and you trace the network connections. So I can trace a bad guy doing something bad on a network back through an IP address and to a computer. I can put a computer on that IP address, but I have to connect the fingers to those keyboards. Who was pushing the keys when the bad thing happened? That's the hardest part. So if you can do that and put the bad guy behind the keyboard, which we tried to do, we learned our lessons in a couple different cases, and I think on the Silk Road case we were able to definitively have a few different FBI agents seeing Ross type on the keyboard at that time. If you can fill the air gap, it's a good conclusion to the case, and unfortunately, a lot of people think that is the end of the case. It really is the pinnacle of the case. So you have the build-up to the arrest. You have finding the evidence, building, the enough probable cause to make the arrest, and then afterwards, after the arrest, now comes the hard part: getting the evidence ready for trial. You have to make sure every T is crossed, every I is dotted, and make sure that it's airtight. I think the Silk Road prosecution team did a great job. If you can see how long it took the jury to come back with a deliberation, they were gone, I think, 3.5 hours, and that included lunch break and 2 smoke breaks. So the prosecution team really knocked it out of the park. And just yesterday, they were awarded the Attorney General's Award for Outstanding Cyber Investigation. So.
But how does it feel to see that guy, whoever it is, in person for the first time? He has no idea you're there, and is there an adrenaline rush?
Certainly. I mean, you can almost equate it to hide and seek when you're a kid. when you were hiding in the closet and the guy, whoever the seeker is, walks by you. It's that adrenaline rush, like they've gone by, they didn't see you, and it's the exact same feeling.
When Bitcoin is seized by the government, where does it go?
Goes into a wallet with a password that is tightly controlled.
Just one wallet that the government owns.
Unfortunately, when we took the Silk Road, when we took the Silk Road, seized the Silk Road through court order, Bitcoins, my co-case agent, Ilwan Yum, transferred it into a wallet that we created and put the password into a file stored on FBI networks, and then put the actual physical wallet on a thumb drive that was stored in a secured vault.
Okay.
So we essentially put it in cold storage.
Chris, now I got a dead battery on this one.
Okay.
This one's rolling too. So, are you familiar with the case of Charlie Shrem? If so, can you tell us who he was and what happened to him?
Yeah, Charlie Shrem was arrested by the U.S. government here in New York and charged with money laundering, using bitcoins to commit his crimes, and he was convicted and is now serving a prison sentence for that.
Have there been any major Bitcoin heists? And if so, how does something like that go down?
So, you have people losing Bitcoins all the time. If someone's computer hard drive dies and they didn't have a backup of their wallet, they lose them. There have been, there's speculation that Mt. Gox was a giant Bitcoin heist. Some people said it was bad record keeping. Some people said it was taken. I think the case against Carl Force and Sean Bridges could be categorized as a major Bitcoin heist. They were federal agents that were working out of the Baltimore task force to help locate the Silk Road. They had their own investigation that was not part of the New York's investigation, and they have pled guilty to committing crimes in stealing Bitcoins from the site. There have been other cases where you have dark web markets that started up and had people buying illegal goods, put their money in escrow, and then the site just disappears. I could say that would be considered a Bitcoin heist.
So as somebody who worked for the government and now you're in the private practice, how do you feel the government is ill-equipped to deal with these rapid advances in technologies and these new criminals?
It's very profitable to pervert, a new technology that comes out there. There's people that make a lot more money so they can operate a lot faster, buy faster equipment, buy new ideas, pay very, very high values to smart people to find a new way of perverting the technology that's there. The government's slow, and I've always said the government, moves at a very slow pace, but those giant wheels of the government grind finely, and you don't want to get caught in that. So, I think, not to go back to it, but, Silk Road is a prime example. Ross Ulbricht, found new technologies available to make the drug trade easier to get into, everyone's basement or a kid's bedroom. But now he realizes, at sentencing, his own words, that he regretted doing this, because of the sharp sentence he faced.
These new criminals have unlimited global communication, followers online, crowdfunding sources, incredibly sophisticated DIY technology, and now even their own currency. Nothing that we've seen before in history. Are we fighting a losing battle keeping up with these criminals?
I don't think so. I think we eventually will. Look at the birth of the FBI. Back in the start of the 1900s, we had sheriffs in every town and things were starting to get a little out of control. And then we had the highway system, where crime now is going from town to town and going from state to state and crossing lines. So from that, we needed a new force to deal with that, and I think that was the birth of the FBI, the national policing. Unfortunately, with cyber, we're now talking about a global network, not just a highway system. I think we're a little behind the times but we're catching up rapidly to facing this international problem with some sort of cooperation between the different nations and the laws there. I think we don't have, obviously, the FBI and the government can't reach across into every country. Each country has their own rules, but most countries are now understanding that the problem is a global problem and adapting to it. So I think that's going to continue to grow, that cooperation, and the criminals are going to be one step ahead, but you know, the governments are catching up quickly.
What I heard recently, that's why one of the guys who started creating Tor at DARPA, and I don't know if this is a rumor or what, but it was because he kept going to websites, buying stuff, and kept getting fed ads, and it creeped him out. Have you heard that?
I have not, but I work with a guy who was there when Tor was created, so I could ask him.
Yeah.
But I mean, originally it was designed by the Navy, used for ad hoc communications, meaning that the communication points can change and move around. So I might not believe that. Maybe, you know, the idea behind the encryption and hiding where you're truly coming from could come part of that story, but the genesis of the idea was the moving of nodes, of where, you know, the packets don't always have to come from the same place to keep that communication line open. So, I mean, cybercrime can be looked at two different ways. You can be reactive and react to some sort of incident that happened, or you can be prophylactic and find an issue and solve it before it becomes, you know, a major issue, or you see something going along those lines. Our case against Lulsec was a reactive case. So we saw bad things happen, hackings being occurred. We review and try to find out what happened in those networks and see where we can trace to an entry point. And once we find where people illegally entered a computer system, we try to trace back through, you know, IP records or money back to the people that committed those crimes, who made those illegal entries, and see if we can find some attribution to those people that committed that crime. Silk Road was more of, we saw that there's this growing problem on the internet, and what could we do to try to solve it. There was not, you know, a specific event we were reacting to. We just saw there being an issue with cybercrime, and Silk Road was one of many sites that we found on Tor that were offering illegal services and that were to hack into, you know, offering a hacker for hire type service. That we saw what the U.S. government was doing on Silk Road. There was other cases that were taking different approaches. The Baltimore Task Force was doing an undercover type operation. There was a great HSI agent in Chicago who was working on the more traditional, you know, have drugs come in, get fingerprints, work your way up the chain type investigation. Our investigation was purely technical. We wanted to go at it at a technical approach. So we tried to find ways of locating the server and hoping that we saw posts that the person running the site may not have been the best programmer, the best cybersecurity expert, you know, a lot of that stuff comes down to luck, and we got lucky. The IP was exposed to us.
Out of curiosity, do you know who is Satoshi Nakamoto is?
I don't. I get that question a lot. I personally believe it is a group of individuals and not one single person. But I completely understand why that person would want to keep their identity secret. They are sitting on a small fortune.
Is there something about the guys you busted and the criminals that you track that you respect? Is there something nice you can say about them?
I am still. I now have a personal relationship with Hector Montsegur. He recently got a job, and I was more than happy to see that the penal system is not just used for retribution by society. It actually can correct someone's behavior, and obviously it can be used as a deterrent also. But it was good that to see that a reformed criminal is now a functioning member of society. You grow close to these people as especially with Hector. Hector and I, essentially worked together for 8 months side by side after he was arrested and decided to cooperate. So you grow to know the person. It was a little different with Ross. I knew DPR. I didn't know Ross. I only got to spend about 24 hours with Ross after his arrest, and so I got to know Ross, who he is, but I never had empathy with him. I think spending so much time just as two human beings, with Hector is a good example of how you grow to have a sort of relationship.
Have you empathized more with Ross since the case ended, and hearing all these people coming out in support of him? He was such a nice guy, and his mom out there kind of talking about him and staying active in the press, and from learning more about him?
I haven't learned that much about him, to be honest with you. I spent that short amount of time with him, and he seemed like a nice guy then. And learning that he didn't have a criminal history, and what I learned historically about him, I got to be honest. I read, once we located the servers, and I read his online communications, or the persona he was putting out there. That may have tainted my mindset, because I saw him essentially order the hit of 6 people. So I personally don't have relationships with people that order the murders of others.
Well, what do you think about his mom being out there in the public right now and really sort of calling for just trumpeting his cause very verbally?
I I have sympathy for a parent that I don't believe she knew what he was involved in. As a parent, I would probably do the same thing. I would support my children no matter what they were accused of and convicted of.
What do you see as some of the greatest challenges in cybercrime in our future? Near future, and maybe even beyond?
Sure. We want data, and we want it now. We want accessibility to that data wherever we are. We're carrying around a lot of information about ourselves. We're carrying around little beacons in our pockets of where we can be found. All the information about us, about what we buy, where we slap our watch on to make a payment, and all that is being tracked by our location. I think having that data so readily available to you, you're going to have more and more people be victimized. They don't know how to secure their own data. They don't know, going from the individual all the way up to large organizations. Some people don't realize, major organizations don't realize what data they have is valuable to someone else. There's other state-sponsored state-sponsored actors who can manipulate systems to get what some people don't think is important, like a client list, but is very important and useful to them.
Anything else like almost science fiction-y like that you're seeing, like might come into the future of cybercrime? Any hot topic of because we would never. I would 10 years ago I wouldn't have even thought of Bitcoin or Silk Road. I couldn't have made that up.
I know. So you're looking for the next $1 billion idea. I wish I had it. I wouldn't have to work anymore if I came up with that. I think data, right at our fingertips is going to just get more and more until there's a major problem with it. There's going to be a cyber event, and I don't know what can be worse. The OPM hack recently, where every government employee has all their personal data, was stolen is fairly eye-opening to me, because one, I was a victim of it, and two, I know the amount of data that they've now collected and what that can be used to as far as targeting U.S. government officials. So it's scary. It's scary to think about how we have collected so much data in one place on all these individuals, and don't have the same mindset of how precious that is and the need to